In the previous chapter, the protagonist received a mythical tier item, an enchanted divine earring, that allows him to morph at will, and a new skill called Rending Blade, which enhances his attack and debuffs the target with bleeding. And since Wu Yu recognized his worth, she invited him to her secret realm, the Blood Moon City's evolutionary pool, where individuals can break through their own bloodline attributes. However, while Slayer was using the pool, the City Lord's Black Death Guard arrived to summon Wu Yu to the main city immediately, and she couldn't disobey them due to the City Lord's blood summon decree, so she joined the guards and left Slayer alone. However, it turned out to be a setup, as the Shadow Squad ambushed Slayer before he could finish his evolution. Slayer, however, proved to be faster and more skilled than they anticipated, successfully completing his evolution and defeating the assassins effortlessly. After he was done, Wu Yu returned, and revealed that this was all planned by Zhuang, to which Slayer realized she knew about it from the start, so he then concluded that leaving him with the assassins was her second test, which she confirmed, and since she is satisfied with his performance, she was willing to do anything he wishes. But Slayer is a man of focus, commitment and sheer fucking will, and so he asked about the whereabouts of Hanny Xiao. Unfortunately, Wu Yu could only deliver the sad news that his brother was already gone. Now on to the next part. Upon hearing the devastating news, Slayer was so shocked that he fell silent. However, his desire to know what had happened to his brother pushed him to ask Wu Yu for more details. To his surprise, Wu Yu reminded him that this was his second question according to their earlier agreement, but seeing how he was trembling, Wu Yu understood the importance of this matter to him, and so she agreed to answer his questions but first wanted to know why he was so interested in her previous disciple, to which Slayer explained that it is because he is his big brother, and as he shared this, he began to reminisce about the day he had first met him. In the orphanage, whose name he couldn't recall, children would play every day while hoping to be adopted. Unfortunately, those without parents were often targets of bullying, and so a group of older teenagers had decided to torment kids like Lu Li and Ah Fei, and it seems they have already been beaten up by these trash of a human being. However, these bullies didn't stop at physical harm, as they discovered that the rabbit they held was the last memento from a poor child's mother. With this, they decided to be even more malicious, taunting Lu Li and Ah Fei over it. Then it was soon revealed that the leader of the bullies was the legitimate son of the orphanage's owner. This entitled trash of a mentality made him believe that he could do anything he pleased, asserting ownership over everything and everyone in the orphanage, as if they were his playthings. This included tearing apart the stuffed rabbit in front of Ah Fei, a cruel act that Lu Li couldn't allow, since he knew that it would deeply hurt Ah Fei if his last memory with his mom got destroyed in front of him. So he was even willing to go John Wick on them, taking out a pencil to kill the bully before they broke Ah Fei's toy. Fortunately for Lu Li, Hanny Xiao suddenly appeared, and beat the living shit out of them with a broom, which the bullies couldn't even fight back, and so they just run away while their tails tucked between their legs. With the bullies gone, Hanny Xiao's warm smile illuminated their world, as if it had transformed from black and white to vibrant color. He then introduced himself and declared his commitment in protecting them from that moment on. With such warm memories of Hanny Xiao in his heart, Slayer expressed that Hanny Xiao is his closest family. This prompted Wu Yu to recall how Hanny Xiao used to ask her for simple equipment, explaining that he had 2 younger brothers and believed it was his duty as the older sibling to provide the best for them. Understanding Slayer's deep connection to his disciple, Wu Yu mentioned a place called Infernal Purgatory, but this just confused Slayer, as he doesn't have a clue to what she said, so he asks to clarify, to which she realized that it would be best to start from the beginning, and so she explained that it all began after Hanny Xiao had successfully defended his title as the Stormcloud King by defeating the King of Knights, Daegu Dan. This extraordinary victory marked Hanny Xiao's 10th consecutive win and firmly established his reputation as a legendary figure. And just like usual, Hanny Xiao entered the Stormcloud catastrophe, but this time was different. He didn't return even though 4 hours had passed, which was odd because the event had already concluded, and according to the usual protocol, participants should be forcibly sent back when the event ends. However, there was no sign of Hanny Xiao. With this, Wu Yu grew increasingly concerned, so she uses everything at her disposal, and searched everywhere for him. But even with her efforts, It still took her a long time before she found out that the last place Hanny Xiao entered in was called the Infernal Purgatory, and since she knows the location, Slayer asked why she didn't simply go there to find him, to which Wu Yu explained that she couldn't, as there was an unknown force blocking access to that realm, preventing her from teleporting there or intervening in any way. With this challenge ahead, Slayer racked his brain for a solution, but to no avail, and so he decided to reach out to Double C, asking her to search for relevant information about the Infernal Purgatory. To his dismay, as she attempted to access this information, she started to bug out, and shortly after, a system notification popped up, indicating an error. Faced with this setback, Slayer had no choice but to delve into the database himself, which Double C informed him that he didn't have the necessary privileges. But Slayer doesn't give a fuck. He knew the ins and outs of creating this game, so he was confident in his ability to bypass these restrictions, as he switched to the manual input interface, while Wu Yu on the other hand was just standing there on the side, dumbfounded as she was clueless on what Slayer was mumbling about. And as Slayer entered the secret codes, he made an effort to calm himself down, as he realized that he couldn't afford to be hasty when he is so close to potentially finding his brother. And the timeline of his brother's last appearance in the game and when he went offline seemed to align perfectly, strengthening Slayer's conviction that the Infernal Purgatory held the answers he sought, so he can't afford messing up. Soon after he bypassed the system, gaining access to the database, which immediately led him in a sea of floating codes. He then opened a system tab to retrieve the code for the Infernal Purgatory. To his surprise, as he entered the word, system errors began to pop up. It even warned him that if he continued, it would be considered an illegal intrusion, and so he would be forcibly ejected from the system. Still, he couldn't accept it, so he commanded the system to open the source code, but to his dismay, this action seemed to worsen everything, as the source code started to be overwritten, which should have been impossible, so this left him dumbfounded. But before he could find answers, he was in the process of being forcibly ejected. And just like that, he returned to where Wu Yu was, and it seems like she didn't notice his sudden disappearance, as she just proceeded with their conversation as if nothing had happened, telling Slayer that what she had said was all she knew, and if he didn't believe her, he should go and find out for himself, so it looked like Slayer didn't have a choice but to go there himself. However, before he did that, he asked Wu Yu if she would be willing to do him another favor, to which she clarified that this would be his third request. So it seemed like he wouldn't get anything more from her for the time being. To his surprise, Wu Yu had a change of heart and permitted him to tell her what it was. Therefore Slayer didn't think twice to ask her for directions on how to get to the other realm. To which she responded that the only method she knew was the Stormcloud catastrophe, which he had just finished, and it had a time restriction involved as well, so it wouldn't be the best method. And since he was her new disciple, Wu Yu expressed some worry about him, pointing out that he was being a bit impatient. Even Hanny Xiao had awakened twice in the evolution blood pool and still couldn't come back, not to mention his current state. However, Slayer couldn't hear her, as he was deep in thought, since he couldn't just stand still when he was so close to finding his brother. Fortunately, he didn't have to figure it out himself, as Double C informed him that she knew a method to return to the other side, and he just needed to follow her. Therefore, Slayer followed Double C. But Wu Yu was clueless about where he was going, since she couldn't hear nor see Double C, so she asked Slayer about it, to which he explained that he had found a way to go to the player's world, but this confused her even more, prompting Slayer to clarify that it was the realm she always called the other side, which immediately piqued her interest, as she wondered how he knew about this, but she could see that Slayer was in a hurry, so she decided to postpone her questions for later and simply waited for good news from him. Meanwhile, in the player's realm, a massive explosion erupted amidst the trees, resulting in the demise of a group of moth-like monsters, and the one responsible for this fiery display was none other than Afe, who had now reached level 23 as a firestorm mage. Along with his fiery prowess, he seemed to have attracted the attention of a few girls who found him hot as well, swarming around him like moths drawn to a flame. And Afe was enjoying the attention he was receiving from the girls, since he is a man of culture after all, and with the girls near him, he was more than happy to feel their soft company. Still, he can't let himself be seen as a pervert, so he shifted the conversation, inquiring if the high-paying equipment merchant they had mentioned earlier was nearby. which the girls confirmed its proximity, and Ah Fei continued his journey enthusiastically, looking forward to meet this merchant they specially recommended. He even promised the girls that he would treat them to new pieces of equipment after completing his transactions. However, as Ah Fei ventured deeper into the woods, he became aware of a group of players blocking his path, and suddenly, players appeared from all directions, surrounding them. It was clear that this group had nefarious intentions, and they even referred to him as their scapegoat. With this, he quickly instructed the girls to stay behind him and prepared his magic. However, to his dismay, the girls he was trying to protect revealed their true colors as they simultaneously backstabbed him, both literally and figuratively. With this, question filled his mind as to why these girls did him dirty like that. He was even so considerate to give them items and split the money, so their betrayal doesn't make sense to him. However, his questions were swiftly answered in the most unexpected manner, as he overheard the girls being referred to as brother by their guildmates. To his astonishment, it turned out that these three apparent beauties from the North Guild were, in fact, guys in real life all along. This revelation filled Ah Fei with anger, not because of the betrayal of his wealth, but because it was about the betrayal of his trust and feelings, and this newfound motivation compelled him to stand up once more and teach these deceivers a lesson they wouldn't forget. But even before Ah Fei could launch his counterattack, his enemies decided to make the first move, lunging at him. However, Ah Fei proved to be faster than they had anticipated, and so they received a fiery fist that knocked them both down. Suddenly more players were charging at him from behind, but Ah Fei managed to defeat them with a powerful area of effect fire attack. Nevertheless, facing an entire guild in a one versus many situation, he was destined to take some damage, as he didn't see an arrow aimed towards him. Still, he got an insane reaction speed, so he manages to block it in the nick of time. But the battle was far from over, as the cat lady closed in on him, aiming for the kill, but Ah Fei blocked her attack with his abilities. However, it became clear that his mana was running dangerously low, and the problem was, he had already used all of his potions while leveling earlier, and he even gave some of them to those ladyboys, so it was only a matter of time before he would be defeated. And seeing that he was now on the edge, the enemies made it clear that they were after the equipment he had obtained from the limited-time boss. So, before he could do anything stupid, they warned him that their guild had already surrounded the area, and if he didn't cooperate, they would guard his corpse until he dropped the last piece of equipment he had. This was a well-thought-out plan on their part, as characters who died in the wilderness would revive with low health in the same spot after some time, and they would also randomly drop their equipped items and lose some of their experience points upon death. Frustrated, Ah Fei let out a deep sigh, before proceeding to mock every member of their guild, insulting them with every insult he had learned since birth. Even the birds couldn't handle the bars that came out from his mouth. With this, the white-haired dude was immediately triggered, and so he was about to kill Ah Fei on the spot, while Ah Fei on the other hand, couldn't do anything but apologize to his second brother for not protecting the wealth he had entrusted to him. He was deeply regretful for being deceived by scammers. But just before the white-haired guy's attack could land, a shadow abruptly materialized at his rear, and it seemed like Ah Fei was about to receive a double blow. However, to everyone's surprise, the new arrival was actually targeting the white-haired guy, dealing a fatal blow that killed him instantly. And this mysterious figure turned out to be none other than Slayer, who had transformed into a human using his earrings. And Slayer was seething with anger at the way these players had bullied his brother. And so, he looks at them with his devious side-eye, and vowed that not a single one of them would leave that place unscathed. Slayer had received devastating news about his brother's disappearance. Despite not being blood-related, the bond between them was strong, and this revelation hit Slayer hard, so he turned to Wu for an explanation. To which Wu told him that it all happened after Hanny Xiao's 10th victory in the Stormcloud tournament, and just as usual, Hanny Xiao then participated in the Stormcloud catastrophe. But this time was different, as he didn't return, and so Wu initiated a search. But despite using all available resources, it took her a considerable amount of time to discover that Hanny Xiao's last known location was the internal purgatory, and the problem was that she couldn't access this mysterious realm due to an unknown force blocking her. With this news, Slayer had no option but to summon Double C for assistance, but to his dismay, Even Double C started to malfunction as she tried to search for more information about the place. Therefore, Slayer decided to delve into the database himself. Using his secret codes, he bypassed the database, and then he attempted to retrieve information about the internal purgatory. However, this action triggered errors in the system, and even when he tried to open the source code to counter the issue, things only worsened, as an unknown force began overriding the codes, ultimately forcing him out of the system. So, it looks like he doesn't have a choice but to go to the infernal purgatory himself. But the challenge now was that he had no idea how to reach the player's realm on his own. Fortunately, Double C knew the way, and so he decided to follow her guidance immediately. Meanwhile, Slayer's brother, Afe, found himself deceived by what he thought was his harem of admirers, as he discovered that these individuals, whom he believed were women, were, in fact, guys in real life, and they tricked him because they wanted to steal his items that he got from the boss. But Afe was not willing to let these imposters have their way, since the items were a gift from his brother, so he was determined to defend them. So, he gave everything he got to retaliate, but the odds were stacked heavily against him from the start. Taking on an entire guild single-handedly was an impossible feat, and he soon found himself on the brink of defeat. His enemies were even prepared to wait for him to respawn after death so they could kill him repeatedly, causing all his inventory items to drop upon each death. However, their plans were about to be disrupted, as Slayer arrived on the scene, and he was more than pissed to witness that his brother is being bullied by these trash. So Slayer declared that no one would leave this place unharmed. Now on to the next part. Seeing Slayer's new face, Afe immediately recognized him, which instantly lit his eyes up as he soon realized he was saved. Meanwhile, Slayer questioned how Afe managed to get into such a mess in such a short time. But since he was spoiled by his brother so much, Afe dramatically explains his circumstances to his brother, which he tells Slayer that it was their fault, not him, and not only they have robbed him of his equipment but also his pure and sincere feelings. But this outlandish explanation just left Slayer speechless. While this cute interaction unfolded, the three men were wary of Slayer's presence, as they had heard much about this big brother of Afe's, whom he often talked about. Still, it also means that he is very rich like Afe, so their eyes glowed with greed, as they were more excited than scared in Slayer's presence. With this realization, they called out to their guild members to come out, while Afe gets ready to defend their rear. But as time passes by, they noticed no one was responding to their calls, making the trio wonder what's taking them so long. So they turn around, only to find out that everyone has already been violated, and was sprawled on the ground lifeless, without them even noticing, which instantly left them puzzled, baffled, flabbergasted, and mostly confused. As they attempted to make sense of the situation, Afe took this opportunity to get his well-deserved revenge, instantly appearing behind them, to scare them shitless. However, they have the audacity to revert back to acting like girls, trying their best to get themselves out of the situation. They claimed it was all just a practical joke, but Afe isn't a fool.
Silence, wench! I do not wish to be horny anymore. I just want to be happy.
Now that they have defeated the catfishes and their northward guild, they decided to make their way back to the city. As they walked, Afe couldn't contain his curiosity any longer, as he wondered why his brother had come looking for him. So he asked Slayer if he made any progress on their older brother's matter, prompting Slayer to explain about the infernal purgatory, which brought a smile to Afe's face. He was filled with hope and enthusiasm. However, Slayer couldn't share his brother's excitement entirely, as worry clouded his eyes because he knew that this upcoming mission wasn't cause for celebration, since he can only speculate that the place they are going to raid is a high-level one, and based on their current strength, it is simply beyond their reach. Still, Afe remained cheerful, as he was confident that his brother had already figured out a plan. So, he enthusiastically assured Slayer that he would follow his second brother's lead without hesitation, which is why they are now heading to the nearby town, to pawn off all the weapons and equipment they got, while Slayer endured Afe's chatterbox nature, worthy of being the little brother. A few moments later, they had arrived at the southern suburbs, Nikendi Town, where tons of players had gathered, and as they walked through the town, Slayer was relieved to see that he was finally back in the game that he was familiar with, and he even got that unspoken riz. as he kept receiving friend requests left and right. Still he rejected it, since he was a man of focus after all, while his little brother on the other hand, still haven't learned his lesson as he still try to bag a virtual girlfriend even though he knows that they might be a guy in real life. A few steps more, they had arrived at the equipment recycling stall where an old man who looks like so bored of his job greeted them, but as soon as he saw what Slayer wanted to recycle, his demeanor changed. Interest filled his eyes, as he sees so many elite and premium grade equipment all at once, which he then gave them a price of 95,000 gold coins for it, making Afei's eyes filled with excitement, because according to the current exchange rate of game currency, this is equivalent to tens of thousands of real cash. Unexpectedly, Slayer suddenly complimented the shopkeeper's hairstyle, calling it handsome, which really made him happy, and you could tell, it really brightens up his whole week. And just like that, a system notification popped up, congratulating him for successfully triggering the recycling trader's Easter egg, increasing their recycling price for their current transaction by 10%. This shocked Afei as he was not expecting such a thing exist, so he asks Slayer for clarification, to which he explains to him that this one was because of the programmer's little hobbies when designing Easter eggs, since he can't change his baldness, so he just decided to change the world that he helped create. And with this, they received over 100,000 gold, completing the achievement called Tons of Wealth, which Afei was proudly wore the title, garnering the attention of everyone who saw it, while Slayer on the other hand felt embarrassed seeing his little bro act like this. However, they still have so many pieces of equipment left, so Afei asks his brother if they aren't going to sell them, to which he clarifies that they are, and that they just haven't reached the right place to sell them yet. A few moments later, they have arrived at the front of a luxurious massive building, the auction hall, where tons of players have gathered outside, trying to get in. However, it seems like the players were growing impatient as the lines kept on getting longer, and they have already wasted too much time just lining up. But still, the guard weren't fazed by the increasing number of impatient players, as they were too sassy to be bothered, as they were known for their strict criteria for admission, and they weren't about to make exceptions for anyone. This became apparent when a player approached the guards with a polite request, explaining to them that he was just a few hundred gold coins short of meeting the admission requirement and pleaded with them to make an exception, emphasizing that there was an essential piece of equipment he needed in the upcoming auction. However, to his disappointment, the guards not only rejected his plea but also humiliated him outright, calling him a broke bitch before dismissing him. The other players weren't any more sympathetic. Already frustrated with the long line, they resented the player who had held them up, viewing him with disdain for what they saw as a waste of their time. Still, he tried his best to smile. Luckily for him, Slayer and Afei appeared, and told the guards that he is with them, which the guards were questioning their identity at first, but as soon as they saw Afei's title, they immediately went over to the side, opening the door for them, and welcomed them kindly, as they deemed them to be a VIP. Surprising everyone who witnessed it. With this, they entered the lobby of the auction hall, and it was adorned with extravagant chandeliers, marble floors, and a plush red carpet, exuding an elegance unlike any other place they had ever been. And since the short king had other things to do, he expressed his gratitude to his benefactors, and assured them that he would find a way to repay their kindness in the future, which made Slayer and Afei pleased to see the one they have helped as a grateful, well-mannered young man. And so they happily bid each other farewell. Then, a lady wearing a full body net stocking, just like the ones the guards wear, appeared before them, and greeted Afei kindly, and introduced herself as their guide for their visit, and they can call her the Eight of Hearts of the auction hall. And in accordance with his Tons of Wealth title, they have automatically prepared a black gold card for him, which has 3 features. First, it allows the holder to enter without queuing. Second, when selling items in the auction house, the commission is reduced from 10% to 5%. Third, they can use this card to get a loan from the auction house, which the loan limit is determined by their credit limit. Still, Afei's horniness knew no bounds as he asked their guide if the VIP card also included the benefit of entering the space in her heart, which completely caught her off guard. But this game isn't like that, so his riz was completely off the mark, while Slayer, on the other hand, couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed witnessing his little brother's descent into insanity. Nonetheless, he just took a deep sigh, as he knew he couldn't do anything. Unexpectedly, someone familiar walked by him, catching his attention. However, her walking speed appeared to be too fast for Slayer to keep up with, as she was now out of sight, and their guide had already shown them the way to the private room. So Slayer didn't look for her further. A few moments later, they are now seated comfortably. Eight of Hearts handed them their tea and began briefing Slayer and Ah-Fei on what to expect in the upcoming auction, telling them that they will begin auctioning their equipment immediately, as epic equipments are in high demand at the moment, so they can expect that all of the auctions will be closed within an hour. And as for the epic-grade lightsaber of theirs, the Stardust, it is regarded as one of the top-ranked weapons of all time. So, she will submit it to the ultimate auction, and they will definitely get a good price for it. And if they have time, she suggested that they can also take part in the auction as well, since they may come across something that interests them. Still, Ah-Fei haven't got an answer out of her yet, so he immediately asks their guide if she would be also coming with them, since there is so much that he doesn't know about her that he would definitely like to know. However, this actions of Ah-Fei was too much even for Slayer, as their reputation would plummet if things keep going like this, and therefore, Slayer gave him a piece of his mind, smacking Ah-Fei's head to control that uncontrollable horniness of his. And now that was settled, he gave their guide the list of items they require, in order to collect them in an hour, which she understood. A few moments later, the auction has started, and so the auctioneer for this event introduced himself as Jack of Diamonds, and he was more than happy to start the auction, since the item that they have for them today are all priceless, and only they can decide their worth. He also hopes that every guest present will be able to walk away from today's auction with the items their hearts desires. Hearing his opening remarks, the players give him a round of applause, which the auctioneer was thankful for, but that was enough of formalities for today, as he launched into the main event, commencing with the first treasure up for auction, the Roaring Heart of Flame. This gem was designed for embedding in weapons, imbuing them with powerful fire attributes. It was particularly effective against wood-type monsters. The opening bid for this remarkable gem was set at 20,000 gold, in which participant number 78 quickly raised it to 25,000. Then, another bidder pushed it to 28,000. However, the real showdown occurred when participant number 36 boldly surged ahead, raising the bid to an impressive 35,000 gold. He even has a confident grin across his face, while asserting that no one should dare to snatch this coveted item from him, as he had firmly set his sights on it. However, behind his grin lurked a sly personality, as he knew that 35,000 gold was all he had, so he couldn't afford to prolong the bidding, and raising a substantial amount was his strategy to scare away other bidders. And this is only the first auction item, so he was more than confident that there shouldn't be anyone who was willing to pay any higher than him. And just as he presumed, the auctioneer started counting to seal the deal, but to their surprise, participant number 9 raised the bid to 50,000 in the last second, completely shocking everyone, because even if the item was valuable, it isn't worth that kind of amount. Even the previous transactions for such an item only went for around 28,000, so they are more curious to know the identity of this rich man. But this guy doesn't care about them, as he was busy simping for his virtual girlfriend, and just like that, the item was sold to number 9. With this turn of events, guest number 36 couldn't help but feel disappointed, as he had set his heart on acquiring that particular item. However, he knew there was little he could do, as he had been bidding against the infamous Han Xiao, a crypto magnate, so he'd just have to look for another Roaring Heart of Flame next auction. Meanwhile, Ah-Fei was growing increasingly irritated as he observed Han Xiao, unaware that he was actually looking at his own reflection. Nevertheless, the auction was just beginning, so they proceeded to unveil the second item, a special costume known as the Loving Maid, which can transform the wearer into a genuine maid. The starting bid was set at 30,000 gold. Surprisingly, several participants eagerly joined the competition, driving the final bid up to 48,000 gold, with guest number 66 emerging as the victor. Unfortunately for them, the winner was so eager to put it on immediately, so number 66 decided to wear it in front of everyone, shocking everyone who witnessed number 66 undress and equip the maid outfit in front of their very eyes. Even Slayer and Ah-Fei was left speechless, as they witness how this game has a really high degree of freedom. With that matter settled, they resumed the auction by presenting the third item, the Lone Wolf's Boots. These boots gave the wearer a 2% chance of entering Excel mode when moving, Although the starting price was set at 40,000 gold, Han Xiao had different plans, as he outright doubled the price, raising it to 80,000, surprising everyone once again. Because of this, they have collectively decided that if Han Xiao wants it, they would just let him. However, they were unprepared for Han Xiao's extravagant spending spree as he continued to dominate and win every subsequent auction item, while he was doing the chick he's with, indirectly calling everyone a lonely broke bitch, which discouraged the remaining guests, and so they started to leave the auction, as they couldn't even bid on anything, and it goes to show that money really lets one do anything they want. On the other hand, Ah Fei was more irritated with Han Xiao than ever, as he couldn't help but wonder why he felt this way, but it was tempting him to throw a punch at Han Xiao, to which Slayer told him not to, since they will also need Han Xiao's help for their item that's coming right up. And just as Slayer had predicted, the auction was now approaching its climax, and the final treasure to be unveiled was the most valuable of them all, the lightsaber Stardust. This extraordinary item not only granted a significant boost in stats but also possessed 3 rare traits. Its most remarkable feature was its ability to unleash extremely rare light attribute attacks, and in the main storyline quests, particularly those from levels 25 to 30, light-based attacks were essential, so it is not an exaggeration to call it the cream of the crop of all currently available weapons. The starting price for this item was set at 200,000 gold. Surprisingly, Han Xiao didn't follow his previous pattern of doubling the price. Instead, he modestly raised it to 250,000, as he was confident that none of these idiots would dare to challenge him now, since he planned this all along, a game where he placed a sacrifice a small expense to make big gains. To his astonishment, another participant boldly raised the bid to 300,000, leaving Han Xiao with no choice but to counter with 350,000. However, his competitor wasn't backing down and promptly pushed it to 400,000. With this, Han Xiao started to feel the pressure. Not only was this bidder determined, but he was also unfamiliar to Han Xiao, and this also raised his suspicions as he had no information about his opponent. Nevertheless, he decided to raise the bid once more, this time to 450,000, but yet again, his opponent countered with a staggering 500,000. This was a considerable sum, even for Han Xiao. So, he began to contemplate whether it was wise to continue bidding, given that, despite the item's exceptional qualities, it was still an early-game weapon. However, Han Xiao was soon reminded of why he had started bidding in the first place. It wasn't just about acquiring the items. What he truly craved was the exhilaration of winning a high-stakes gamble. With his final bid, he aimed to reach the pinnacle of this cliff overlooking the crashing shores of excitement. Therefore, Han Xiao boldly raised the bid to 600,000, to which Ah Fei was ready to contest this. But fortunately, Slayer intervened, and just like that, the auctioneer began counting down to seal the deal, while Han Xiao felt a rush of euphoria, convinced that he had emerged victorious in this competition. But to their surprise, another contestant suddenly raised the price to 1 million, catching everyone off guard. This unexpected bidder turned out to be Luna, who maintained her calm demeanor, as if she hadn't just dropped the most disrespectful timing ever. And with this, the auction had ended. After a few moments, Slayer and Ah Fei left the place. As they walked, Ah Fei couldn't contain his excitement, realizing that making money could be so much fun. Even Slayer couldn't help but smile at his little brother's enthusiasm. However, the last 1 million was indeed unplanned income. So, with a total of 1,520,000, minus the 200,000 spent buying various items, they still had 1,320,000 left. After they received the money, the number on the card only changed from 8988 to 7450, which shocked Ah Fei, because this meant that there were 7,450 people in this region who were richer than them, revealing the presence of numerous crypto tycoons playing the game. Nevertheless, Slayer reassured him not to worry about such things and reminded him that they should focus on the main story for now, to which Ah Fei was delighted to follow this advice. However, it seems like they had caught the attention of Luna, as she observed them from afar. In the previous chapter, Slayer reunited with his younger brother, Ah Fei, and shared with him the whereabouts of their missing brother. However, they realized they were still too underpowered to venture to that location, so it became evident that they needed to increase their strength first. To achieve this, They needed a significant amount of money, so they decided to head to the nearest village and entered the auction house to sell their looted equipment. They even participated in the bidding to manipulate the prices to reach its highest price possible. Unexpectedly, Luna was also present at the auction, hoping to regain her sword, and the fact that she is filthy rich. She easily raised the bidding to $1 million, astonishing everyone present. This impressive outcome left Slayer and Ah-Fei feeling invigorated as they left the auction house with high spirits, but this also managed to catch the attention of Luna as she observed them from afar. Now on to the next part. Slayer and Ah-Fei had left Niken Town behind and were now en route to Bush Coal Village. During their journey, Ah-Fei attempted to strike up a small conversation with his brother, suggesting that they should have a barbecue later tonight, since they haven't had a meal outside for quite some time. However, Slayer remained silent and suddenly came to a halt. This left Ah-Fei perplexed, but before he could react, Slayer loudly addressed the person who had been following them, urging the mysterious person to reveal herself, which she complied, and to Ah-Fei's surprise, it was indeed the girl from the auction house who had been trailing them, which Ah-Fei quickly connected the dots, realizing why she had been so willing to pay such a high price, and that she is just a thief all along, planning to steal back the money she had given them, which instantly flustered Luna. Still, she immediately clarifies to avoid confusion, telling them that it is not like what he assumed. She doesn't have bad intentions. She is only tailing them, because the lightsaber they auctioned was her dropped equipment from before, and so she was merely curious about how they had acquired the weapon. To which Ah-Fei responded with disbelief, stating that what Luna was saying was ridiculous. The lightsaber wasn't her weapon, it was something his second brother had acquired by defeating a time-limited boss. This brought shock to Luna's face as she was unable to believe that someone had managed to kill a boss she couldn't defeat. With this, she instantly approached them and politely asked Slayer for a practice duel. Ah-Fei was bewildered by her sudden request, but Slayer understood her intentions. He, however, had no interest in entertaining her and promptly refused, while Ah-Fei remained skeptical, thinking that Luna might be like the 3 girls he had encountered earlier, pretending to be a woman in the game, but actually a guy in real life who would backstab them when the opportunity arose. But in reality, all Luna wanted was to know who was the stronger one between her and Slayer. After that fateful encounter, Slayer and Ah-Fei continued their journey to the Bush Coal Village. As they drew closer, Ah-Fei asked his brother for some tips. Knowing they'd arrive soon, Slayer was glad to provide information. He explained that the difficulty level of the village wasn't very high because it was built in the early stages of the game's development. And the storyline of the village went roughly like this. The hamlet known as the Bush Coal Village was under attack and surrounded by monsters from all sides. Their initial task upon entering the village was to clear out the monsters threatening it. Once inside, the villagers would reveal the reason behind the attacks. A little girl within the village possessed a body containing holy light, making her a treasure coveted by the monsters. Consequently, they would receive a mission to safely deliver the girl to the Temple of Holy Light. On the way, they would encounter a few waves of enemies, but as long as they delivered the girl safely to their destination, the Temple of Holy Light, their mission would be complete. Ah-Fei deeply appreciated this information. He felt that with his second brother by his side, it was as if they had cheats in the game, as they knew in advance what would happen. And just like that, they have arrived at the village. But before they could enter, Ah-Fei noticed something unusual. So, he instructed his brother to stay put while he cleared the path ahead, and just watch as he put on a showy performance. And so, Ah-Fei charged vigorously at 2 pig-like ladies who were minding their own business, instantly scaring them. They then closed their eyes and screamed for help, which confused Ah-Fei, since monsters like them shouldn't be acting this way. So, he stopped his advances and asked who they were. In response, they revealed that they were the villagers of this village. Then they turned the question back on him, asking who he was instead. With this, Ah-Fei realized his mistake and apologized for the confusion, explaining that he had attacked because he was here to eliminate the monsters as part of their mission. Hearing his explanation, their demeanor instantly changed. They realized that they had finally met the fabled adventurer right before their eyes, which instantly rizzed them up, and so they eagerly clung to Ah-Fei and willingly show him the way to their village. While Ah-Fei was pleased with this outcome and couldn't believe how warm-hearted the villagers were. On the other hand, Slayer got no bitches, but this wasn't the reason why he has a bothered expression. The true reason is that the villagers weren't human as intended, and are all pigmen instead. However, he understood that an immediate reaction wouldn't get them anywhere, so he remained silent and decided to investigate on the side. And so they continued their walk to the village, and as they did this, they were greeted with warm praise and enthusiasm from the villagers. The villagers hailed them as legendary adventurers who would free their village from the monsters. They even offered to show them the village's best produce, and the young ones were equally excited, and even the village chief made a grand entrance just to greet them, and then encouraging the villagers to cheer and applaud the newly arrived adventurers. However, all this seemed contradictory to what Slayer had explained earlier to Afe. So Afe asked his brother if it was possible that someone from the Destiny Corporation had altered the mission, to which Slayer replied that it was highly impossible. While the story and the villagers' appearances could be changed, the key characters and their lines couldn't be altered, and therefore, this left them wary of the situation they found themselves in. Nevertheless, they hadn't yet received the mission, so they allowed the villagers to continue their warm welcome. The villagers extended their hospitality by organizing a banquet, which the villagers were eagerly looking forward to, and so the villagers led them to the banquet location. And during the walk, Slayer seized the opportunity to inquire if he could see the purple medic flowers. He mentioned hearing that they were blooming splendidly in the village, but the villagers seemed hesitant, giving the impression that they wanted the adventurers to attend the banquet first. However, this only deepened Slayer's suspicions, as it was now fucking evident that they are up to no good. Shortly after, the banquet began, and the pigmen were enthusiastically indulging in their food, savoring every bite as if it were their last meal. They seemed insatiable.
Hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
That is cannibalism right there, but somehow, they do not care, gorging themselves like a maniac. Even Afe found himself succumbing to the tantalizing aroma, and his stomach rumbled with hunger, as the in-game food appeared even more enticing than what they had in the real world, and he had heard that the game simulated their sense of taste to perfection, so he contemplated grabbing a bite for himself. However, his appetite was quickly extinguished when he witnessed one of the villagers eating a bowl filled with eyes as if they were gummy bears. Disturbed by this sight, Afe and Slayer decided to locate the mission NPC, but the village was teeming with inhabitants, making it challenging to identify the correct person. So Afe asked if they needed to approach every single villager to inquire. In response, Slayer assured him there was no need for that, as they could spot the mission NPC if they observed carefully. With that, Slayer approached an individual who stood out from the rest, quietly attempting to blend into the crowd. However, she held an apple, instead of the countless servings of meat on the table. Therefore, it was no doubt that she was the NPC they are looking for, and so Slayer immediately asks if she wished to go to the Temple of Holy Light, which instantly filled her eyes with relief, as this adventurer was the one she had been eagerly awaiting, the one that can save her from this nightmare. And with this, they had successfully triggered Mission 2. Following this, the once casual atmosphere took a dark turn. The moon suddenly turned menacingly red, and the loud sound of the pigmen feasting ceased abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake, and it became clear that something was amiss. Confirming their earlier suspicions, the pigmen began to snarl viciously, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust, and they were now closing in from all sides. In a sudden twist, the pigmen let out agonizing screams, as if something was filling them from the inside. Their eyes rolled back, and their bodies transformed, bulging with newfound muscles as if they'd been infused with some kind of steroids. Then they immediately launched an attack on Slayer's group from both sides. Unfortunately for them, the brothers' combat skills far surpassed their attackers, and so they dispatched the pigmen with just a single powerful blow, taking them completely by surprise. With this, the pigmen realized that their only hope was to overwhelm the brothers with sheer numbers, and so they swarmed in. But Slayer and Afe remained unfazed, meeting them head-on. With this, the sounds of their intense struggle reverberated through the surroundings, yet even against overwhelming odds, Slayer and Afe emerged victorious. Much to their surprise, the battle was far from over, as the dismembered pigmen's corpses started to glow with mana, and to the brothers' astonishment, they began to regenerate. Before long, the once slain pigmen were standing there, hale and hearty, as if nothing had happened. In this perplexing situation, Afe turned to his brother, seeking a strategy. Unfortunately, Even Slayer couldn't provide a clear answer. It defied all logic, because the pig-headed people should not have such an ability to revive. And whatever's happening here is completely different from the original design. So he found himself wondering what had transpired within Destiny Corporation after his departure. However, dwelling on these thoughts wouldn't provide any solutions for their current predicament, but he was certain of one thing: their stamina was limited. Therefore, they couldn't keep fighting these relentless foes. So, they chose a tactical retreat, leaping through windows and dashing down narrow streets until they found refuge in an empty building. However, it quickly became apparent that they weren't alone in the building. As Ah-Fei was about to voice out, a hand suddenly appeared, silencing him, and the hand belonged to Luna herself. This startled Ah-Fei, while Slayer had already pointed her blade at her. However, it seemed like she had no intention of fighting them, as she gestured for them to remain quiet. As the monsters hadn't left the vicinity, with her intentions made clear, she instructed them to continue their conversation upstairs, which they willingly did. As they settled into their temporary hideout upstairs, Luna explained her presence. She emphasized that, just like them, she was here to complete the mission. She wanted to make it clear that she wasn't spying on them again, and that she had actually arrived in the village earlier than them. However, upon entering, she immediately sensed that something was amiss. This suspicion prompted her to remain and conduct a proper investigation, choosing to wait until nighttime to do so. It was at this point that Slayer and Ah-Fei had unknowingly walked in when she was just about to venture outside. Surprisingly, Slayer concurred with Luna's assessment, acknowledging that there were indeed too many peculiarities in this place, and so he turns to the girl and asks if she has any idea what happened before they had arrived here. However, it appeared that the little girl was reluctant to answer their questions. Luna, sensing the little girl's doubts, she accompanied her words with a warm smile, reassuring her, as she emphasized that their purpose here was to protect her, so she can rest assured and share whatever she knows with them. With this, she was convinced, and so she decided to show them the truth, taking her masks off, and began to recount the unsettling events that had transpired in the village. The Bush Village had once been a safe and unassuming place. The villagers were a close-knit, warm-hearted community. However, outside the village, there were often pig-headed people, peculiar creatures that had occasionally roamed nearby. According to an elder who frequently left the village, these creatures weren't particularly dangerous as long as they were spotted early, and you kept a wide distance from them. Over time, the villagers discovered that these pig-headed creatures not only refrained from attacking people but even started mimicking everyone's movements, which the villagers initially found their behavior rather humorous, and consequently, their vigilance against these monsters gradually relaxed. That was until the day a patrolling knight from the Temple of Holy Light visited the village. The knight was Ser Kerlik, a very strong and gentle individual who had made quite an impression on the village, and under the guidance of Ser Kerlik, they all gave a prayer. Only this prayer was different from the others, as she felt her body getting hotter and hotter, and pain as though she was being pricked by something. Troubled by this, she approached Ser Kerlik, seeking an explanation for her unusual experience, and when she shared her ordeal with Ser Kerlik, a smile gradually illuminated his face. He eagerly told her that she had experienced a one-in-a-million event as she had been awakened and chosen by the Holy Light. With this, she could join the Temple of Holy Light and become one of them. Furthermore, their village would gain the protection of the temple, ensuring that they would never have to worry about monster attacks again. But just as she was about to share this exhilarating news with everyone, the monsters launched a sudden and brutal attack. They were vicious, cruel, and numerous, and no matter what they did, the monsters wouldn't die, and so the villagers were all captured, and tragically, Ser Kerlik lost his life while trying to protect them. Overwhelmed and terrified by the horrific events she had witnessed, she found herself paralyzed with fear. She dared not call for help or make an attempt to escape. Her mind went blank, and in her numb state, all she could do was weep. However, after crying for an indeterminate amount of time, her tears eventually ceased. She began to think that perhaps it was the Holy Light itself comforting her and urging her to be strong. With this newfound resolve, she became convinced that she had a responsibility to see things through. After all, the Holy Light had chosen her for a reason. That's why she decided to don the mask and pretend to be one of the monsters, patiently waiting for an opportunity to escape. as she felt compelled to share the truth of what had transpired with the Temple of Holy Light, to ensure that the holy light would once again shine upon their village. This revelation left both Luna and Slayer puzzled as they pondered the root cause of the pigmen's unusual behavior. But before they could arrive at any conclusions, Ah-Fei stepped in to comfort the girl, assuring her that she didn't need to rely on the temple because he and his second brother would handle the situation. This reassured the girl, and so she finally let out a smile. However, the menacing red moon they had seen earlier had transformed into a sinister eye, glaring at them intensely through the window. And before they could react, the building was suddenly breached, and the girl was now in the clutches of a massive boar that loomed over them as if they were ants, while releasing a menacing laugh as it reveled in capturing the little girl. Slayer and Ah-Fei had arrived at the Bush Coal village, where they are supposed to clear the monsters near the village to enter it, and once they enter, the villagers will reveal the reason why they are being attacked, which would be that there is a little girl in the village who possesses a body containing holy light. Consequently, they will receive a mission to safely deliver the girl to the Temple of Holy Light. However, as soon as they arrived at the village, everything they had anticipated were all wrong, as the villagers are now pigmen, and somehow, even the key characters and their lines and dialogue had completely changed, which was impossible. With this, they were sure that something was amiss, but since they haven't encountered the NPC that will give them the mission, they decided to follow along. To their surprise, once they have distinguished the said NPC, all the pigmen transformed into a berserk state, and somehow, the pigmen also seem to be immortal, which they shouldn't have such ability. So staying to fight these monsters isn't a smart decision. So they decide to do a tactical retreat, finding refuge in an empty building. To their surprise, Luna was already in the building, but given their shared predicament, they decided to team up. However, they were unsure of their next steps without understanding why the village had undergone such a bizarre transformation. So they turned to the girl they had rescued, to which she revealed that the villagers were originally human, but the pigmen had attacked and replaced them once they discovered she was chosen by the holy light. After hearing this tragic story, Ah-Fei tried to comfort her, which she appreciated quite so. Unexpectedly, a giant boar had found her, which it didn't hesitate to abduct her on the spot. Even the brothers and Luna wasn't fast enough to react. Now on to the next part. The group was caught off guard by the sudden turn of events, but it seems like the giant boar isn't planning on killing the girl just yet, as it only holds her up high while it continued to laugh menacingly. But Slayer and his companions were not about to let these monsters have their way, and if the girl were to die, the mission would fail, and likely it will affect the world as well, and so they didn't hesitate to attack the giant boar, charging all together to beat the living daylights out of it. However, the boar's enormous size wasn't just for show, as it absorbed their combined attacks with ease and effortlessly swept them aside with a simple swipe of its hand. What's more, like the other pigmen, it healed from its wounds at an astonishing rate, while it revealed a wicked smile as it taunted Slayer's group. Seeing how this unfolded in front of them, the group searched for a way to restrain the boar or find some weakness to exploit, but the boar was relentless, and wouldn't just let them take a second to think, as it attacked them with a crushing downward smash that obliterated the building they had been standing on. Luckily, they were fast enough to dodge the attack, and just before the boar could strike again, Slayer called out to his little brother to cover him while he prepared something, which Ah-Fei understood the plan quite well, so he executed the flashiest attack he had in his arsenal, charging at the boar head-on, while making it so that all its attention is only to him, unleashing his fiery comet skill, bombarding the beast with a barrage of fireballs, while Slayer stealthily maneuvered to the boar's blind spot. And due to Ah-Fei's relentless attacks, the boar grew increasingly agitated. So even though it still held the girl in its hand, it didn't think twice to attack Ah-Fei with the same hand. However, it was still all according to plan, as Slayer appeared in front of it, and used his rending explosive blade to slice open the boar's hand. With this, the girl is now within sight, and so Slayer reached out to save her. However, this boar had a few tricks up its sleeve, as it could spawn underlings within its body, and these new pigmen launched a surprise attack on Slayer. Fortunately, Luna was there to help defend Slayer's rear. With Luna covering him, Slayer could focus on rescuing the girl. But just when they thought they had the upper hand, the boar's arm, on which they were standing on, began to crumble, as it turns out that the boar cleverly decided to transform the entirety of its arm into pigmen, taking them by surprise once again. But now it was evident to Slayer that this colossal boar was, in fact, an amalgamation of all the pigmen, and defeating such a formidable foe is too high of a difficulty for an early mission like this. Therefore, Luna finally realized that slaying this boss wasn't the primary objective of the mission. Instead, their key task was to safely deliver the girl to her intended destination. And now that they are at the same page, they decided to focus on rescuing the girl. In the meantime, they left Ah-Fei to deal with the pursuing crowd of pigmen, which he understood. In response, he unleashed a devastating explosion, one that even Megumin would be proud of if she witnessed it. And with their roles clarified, Slayer and Luna concentrated on tracking down the pig that held the girl. Much to their surprise, this pig turned out to be not only nimble but also quite intelligent, as it abruptly altered its course, leading them into a nearby building, which Slayer and Luna wasted no time in pursuing it. However, upon entering the room, they found that the pig had already dashed to the opposite side. This made Slayer realize that capturing it would be a significant challenge. Not only was it swift, but it is also very familiar with the layout of its environment. But before they could continue the pursuit, he noticed that Luna's attention was drawn to something in the room, and so Slayer turned to see what had captured her interest. And to his surprise, it was the original occupants of the village. They were confined to a cage, malnourished and seemed to have lost their sanity, mimicking the behavior of pigmen with crazed snorting. And the fact that this virtual game portrayed their suffering so vividly that it was distressingly realistic, Slayer isn't willing to stand by. And so, without any hesitation, Slayer rushed to free them. However, even though the cage was now open, the villagers had endured so much suffering that their humanity appeared irrevocably lost, as they remained unresponsive, continuing to mimic the pigmen, and witnessing this firsthand left a bitter taste in their mouths. And with this, Luna couldn't help but curse at Genesis, believing it was all their fault. This surprised Slayer since he had never heard this name before, and it seems like Luna knows more than he had, and so he inquired Luna about it. However, before she could respond, Ah-Fei loudly called out to Slayer, asking his brother to save him because he couldn't hold back the pigmen anymore, as their numbers proved to be more than he could chew. Simultaneously, at a distance, the pig that had captured the girl had put quite some distance between them, leaping nimbly through buildings. Meanwhile, the girl had regained consciousness, but her hopes were dwindling, as she believed her fate was sealed, that she would be devoured. A short while later, the girl found herself held captive in a tall building, while the impatient pig grumbled about the tardiness of the others. Restless and bored, it turned its attention to the girl. As it drew near, it sensed the unmistakable scent of holy light, which heightened its hunger, and so the pig lost all his control, lunging at her, seemingly intent on devouring her alive. However, the girl was no coward. She wouldn't let a monster have its way without a fight, and with this unwavering courage, she manifested a blade made from the holy light and slashed at the pig, which was effective, as it caused the pig to let out an agonized scream. However, this enrages the pig even more, and so the pig resolved to end the girl's life even if it caused them to lose the holy light. But despite the imminent danger, the girl bravely faced her fate, as she believes that she will always be with the holy light no matter what happens to her. Fortunately, just before the pig's attack could land, Slayer acted swiftly, severing the pig's hand from its body. This unexpected intervention left the pig shocked, unable to fathom how Slayer had located them so rapidly. So, it inquired about his methods, but Slayer, seeing no reason to answer a monster, maintained silent. But to make things clear, finding them hadn't been a matter of luck or ease, as they had to simultaneously evade a horde of pigmen while navigating unfamiliar terrain. Nonetheless, Slayer is always prepared, as he possessed a pill capable of rendering them invisible for a limited duration when ingested. This granted them the opportunity to put some distance between themselves and the horde, affording a moment's respite to regroup and strategize. Presently, they faced two primary dilemmas. One is the pig that cannot be killed, and the other is they don't have a single clue on where the girl is now located. But given the unconventional nature of their task, Slayer concluded that it is better to use unconventional methods as well. With this realization, he proceeded to brief Luna and Ah-Fei on their next course of action. A while later, the pigmen continued their relentless search for Slayer's group. Unbeknownst to them, one of the pigmen had slipped away and was discreetly indulging in a feast of his own. But with the way he eats, it was bound that someone had figured out what he was doing. Still, even though he was caught, he used all the bullshit he could muster just to get out of his situation. However, this particular pigman, of a somewhat familiar disposition, didn't concern himself with such minor matters. Instead, he offered a warm smile to the pig and reassured him that there was no need for worry, as he had just finished his own meal as well, and since it looks like they would get along quite well, the peculiar boar, in a rather charming way, invited the pig to take a break and engage in a leisurely conversation, and because of the boar's charismatic demeanor, the pig easily accepted the invitation, and so the two of them settled in a secluded place where they could freely chat, which Slayer didn't waste no time in using his social skill to casually open up his concerns about the trio of adventurers they had recently encountered, as it seemed to be that they are powerful and capable, so there might be a chance that the little girl they have abducted gets taken away from them. The pig, however, was quite confident and dismissed these worries, as he reassured the peculiar boar that there was no reason for concern, since Lao Wang, the fastest among their group, was in charge of the girl, and he is the fastest among their brothers, and he knows every house in the whole village, coupled with the fact that they have so many brothers, so it was just a matter of time before they hunted down those three adventurers, and got to know what they taste like, and with this in mind, he firmly believed that their plans were foolproof, which the peculiar boar chuckled in agreement, and seeing that this pig doesn't suspect him at all, as it continued to tell him all the secrets it knew freely, Slayer took this opportunity to suggest that they should proceed with their search for the three adventurers, and assemble at the village entrance where the girl was held captive. After all, the three adventurers would undoubtedly aim to rescue her, to which the pig quickly corrected him, stating that the assembly point was, in fact, the clock tower. With this information, Slayer finally obtained what he needed. However, he couldn't afford to let any of the pigs suspect him, and so to divert any suspicion, he offered the pig a friendly smile and made another excuse, blaming it all on the liquor he had consumed. That's why he forgot where they are supposed to assemble. After that, a thunderous explosion happened near their vicinity, startling the pig, while Slayer knew exactly what was happening, as it was his cue to leave the place unnoticed, while his little brother, Ah-Fei, creating a loud commotion as he carried Luna, who was fully concealed from head to toe, in order to fool the pigmen that they had already saved the girl, which worked perfectly, as the pigmen wasted no time in chasing them as quickly as they could. With this, Slayer had easily entered the clock tower without much trouble, and now that he is closer to saving the girl, he didn't hesitate to slice Lao Wang into bits, and ran away with the girl. A short while later, Slayer and his team regrouped, making a frantic effort to exit the village while being pursued by a relentless horde of pigmen. Simultaneously, another group of pigmen decided to merge again and launch an attack from above. However, their sizable combined presence cast a noticeable shadow, alerting Slayer and his crew in advance, and so they quickly consumed agility potions, boosting their movement speed by 30% for 30 seconds, which helped them evade the giant boar's attack from above, as it also made it easier to escape the bush coal village. With this, Ah-Fei suggested they could now take a break, but due to the strange events that had occurred earlier, Slayer isn't willing to bet on those assumptions, so he proposed that they put some more distance between themselves and the pigmen before they could rest, which was a smart decision by Slayer, because as they continued to run, they noticed shadows being cast over them. Turning to look at it, they discovered that the pigs had devised an unusual tactic, tossing one another into the air to catch up to Slayer's group. With this, it was clear that their encounter with these fuckers was far from over,